Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, bringing you some of the best college football news, predictions, and analysis. And before we begin, as always, check out all the links in our description below, where you can go follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Gridiron Expert, and also visit our official website, thegridironexpert.com, where you can sign up for our weekly newsletter and also sign up for our expert picks, where for just $30, you will receive every single one of our 2019 college football spread picks, including the postseason. And I can promise you that's a deal you do not want to pass up, and I can promise you, you do not want to miss our Week 2 expert picks. Now, Week 1 of the college football season brought its fair share of excitement and big-time upsets. But the question is whether or not Week 2 can live up to that excitement. And I'm here to tell you that it can, and I'm here to tell you that it will. Week 1 only brought us one ranked versus ranked matchup. That was when number 16 Auburn took down number 11 Oregon 27-21 in Arlington, and arguably the best game of the opening weekend of the college football season. Now entering Week 2, we have two ranked versus ranked matchups. Number 12 Texas A&M traveling to take on the reigning national champions in Clemson, and then the biggest game of the night, number 6 LSU traveling to Austin to take on number 9 Texas. We're going to break down those two games and the three others that we think are the biggest games going in to Week 2. And of course, we're going to share who we think will win those games. Those, of course, designated by the teams with the line under their name. And we'll kick things off with the 11 o'clock game. Army traveling on the road to take on number 7 Michigan. And this is a trendy upset pick for many, at least it was back in the preseason. That was, of course, before we saw Army play against Rice and Michigan play against Middle Tennessee State. The Football Power Index, the FPI, is only giving Army a 3.8% chance to come on the road to the Big House and win this game. And rightfully so. Army struggled mightily against Rice in their season opener, beating the Owls just 14-7 and needing a touchdown pass with just a little under 4 minutes left to clinch the win over the Owls. Now, I will say that Army does own the second longest winning streak in the nation. They have won 10 straight games. The only team that has won more in a row is, of course, Clemson, the reigning national champions last year, who went a perfect 15-0. They had 231 yards rushing against Rice, which is, of course, to be expected from any academy team, Navy, Army, Air Force, etc., and especially from Army. But to win this game against Michigan, they are going to have to throw. They are going to have to use Kelvin Hopkins and win this game through the air. And I do not know if they are capable of that. On top of winning through the air, their defense is going to have to step up mightily. They allowed Rice's running back, Nashawn Ellerby, to rush for over 100 yards, 103 yards, which was 11.44 yards per carry. And I know they lost Jay Bateman as their defensive coordinator, but they are going to have a tough time stopping this Michigan offense, which could arguably be one of the better ones that Jim Harbaugh has had since he arrived in Ann Arbor, if Army wants to have any chance to win this game. Michigan, on the other hand, we mentioned how Army is a dominant rushing team, how they rushed for over 200 yards last week against Rice. Michigan only allowed 67 rushing yards to Middle Tennessee in their 40-21 victory over the Blue Raiders. They themselves, the Wolverines, had 233 rushing yards, so it's going to be tough for this Army defense to stop. But outside of that, Shea Patterson is the absolute leader, had himself quite a game against Middle Tennessee. And I know Rice and the Blue Raiders, not your traditional powers, but nonetheless showed that Army has a lot of things that need to be worked on. Michigan seems to be going in the right direction as they are looking to capture their first Big Ten title under Jim Harbaugh and potentially make the college football playoff. We have the Wolverines winning this game against the Knights. Trendy upset picked by some, but not from us here at the Gridiron Expert. Our second game also comes early in the morning at 11 o'clock. And this one could be considered an upset by some, but for many, Maryland is favored. Number 21 Syracuse will travel to take on Mike Locksley and Josh Jackson, the transfer quarterback from Virginia Tech. And we'll start talking about the orange here before we talk about the favored home team. Syracuse, sitting at 21st in the nation, shut out Liberty last week 24-0, which give the Orange credit. Liberty usually has a fairly potent offense, especially led by their quarterback in Stephen Calvert. But they were kind of without their head coach. Hugh Freeze sitting up there in a hospital bed, coaching from the coach's booth. not necessarily the type of motivation and leadership you want, although you have to give Hugh Freeze credit for his dedication to his team. But the one thing that I praised Syracuse on in the offseason was that despite losing Eric Dungey, Tommy DeVito was going to be just fine, was going to fill in Eric Dungey's role in 2019 and pick up the passing attack right where it left off. That was not the case against Liberty. Tommy DeVito threw for just 176 yards and had 2 interceptions, while the Orange relied heavily on the run game led by Mo Neal. That's going to certainly have to change in this game against Maryland if the Orange want to come on the road and get a quality win over another Power 5 opponent. Maryland, on the other hand, shut out Howard 79-0. And I know it was just Howard, but anytime you put up 79 points, that is extremely impressive. Maryland falling just 1 point shy of a school record for points in a game. Josh Jackson stepped into Mike Locksley's new offense, didn't miss a beat from his time at Virginia Tech, throwing for 4 touchdowns in this game, and the Terrapins overall had a combined 317 rushing yards. Now, the big difference maker in this game will be the defense. Syracuse's defense held Liberty to -4 rushing yards. Syracuse had 317 in their win against Howard. What's going to give? Will Syracuse's defense step up once again and force Josh Jackson to win this game through the air? Or will Maryland exploit this Syracuse defense and be able to have a balanced attack both through the air and on the ground, much like they had against Howard, and pull off the upset against the Orange? We think that's exactly what's going to happen. Mike Locksley starts his tenure with the Terrapins with a 2-0 start and a quality win over a ranked Power 5 opponent. Then we have what is the second biggest game of the day. Of course, the biggest is LSU and Texas. But the second biggest, number 12, Texas A&M, traveling to number 1, Clemson. And as we all know, last year, it was an absolute thriller in College Station. Clemson surviving that game 28-26 against the Aggies. And if this game didn't need any more fuel to the fire, if it didn't need any more hype or any more, motivation for Texas A&M or Clemson, Texas A&M's offensive lineman Jared Hawker came out and said that they will in fact beat Clemson. That A&M is going to go into Death Valley and defeat the Tigers. Bold words for a man that lost last year and is facing the reigning national champions and arguably the best quarterback in the entire nation. The key in this game, of course, will be quarterback play, more so from Kellen Mond than Trevor Lawrence. And if you remember, Mond threw for over 400 yards last year, 430 to be exact, against Clemson in College Station. That was the only reason Texas A&M was still in that game at the end of the fourth quarter, was because of the play from Kellen Mond, one of the better quarterbacks in the entire SEC. They had a very balanced attack against Texas State, but like all the other teams we mentioned, Texas State's no powerhouse. This is the first true test for the Aggies. They're going to have to step it up across the board. The offense is going to have to step up. They're going to have to limit their turnovers, and they're going to have to create turnovers defensively against one of the best offenses in all of college football. Clemson, on the other hand, we mentioned how Trevor Lawrence was one of the best in the nation, but he didn't look like it in their win against Georgia Tech in Week 1. Lawrence only threw for 168 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Luckily, he has this guy in the backfield named Travis Etienne, who rushed for 205 yards and 3 touchdowns, averaging 17 yards per rush. This Clemson offense, we said it once, we'll say it again, is one of the best in the entire nation. A&M's defense has to be prepared to come up and slow down the run game, but even if they do that, Trevor Lawrence has a potent passing attack with one of the best wide receiver corps in the nation. If you take away one, the other is going to do just fine. That's the issue that Texas A&M defense face in this game against the Tigers. I do think Clemson wins this game in Death Valley. Expect it to be close, much like it was last year. If I was betting, which I will be in our expert picks, I think I would take Texas A&M and the points in this one, a little bit over 17-point underdogs. Jimbo Fisher knows how to coach against Dabo Swinney. They have a history between Florida State and Clemson in the ACC. I expect A&M to put up another big fight, but fall short once again in Death Valley. Then we have number 25, Nebraska, traveling on the road to face off against Colorado. And interestingly enough, the FPI, the Football Power Index, gives Colorado a 51.2% chance to win this game. So the FBI is favoring Colorado to actually pull off the upset over the Cornhuskers. And if you remember last year, Colorado came in and pulled off that upset. beating Nebraska 33-28 and showing that Scott Frost's Nebraska team might not be heading in the right direction. We certainly saw that as they started 0-6, but ended up winning 4 of their final 6 games to finish 4-8. Nebraska hoping to come on the road to Colorado and get revenge after that devastating loss last year. But they're going to need an offense to do that. And their offense did not show up in that Week 1 win over South Alabama. They only scored 2 offensive touchdowns, 2 one-yard rushing touchdowns. The rest of their points, the other 21, as they won 35-21 over South Alabama, came on a 38-yard pick six, a 76-yard punt return, and a fumble recovery in the end zone. So credit to Nebraska's defense and special teams, but is their offense ready to go up against a defensive-minded coach in Mel Tucker on the road? Adrian Martinez has to show up for this game, only threw for 178 yards and 1 interception in that win over South Alabama. He was praised as a Heisman hopeful and maybe one of the better quarterbacks in the Big Ten. He didn't show it in Week 1. Let's see if he can show it in Week 2. Colorado, on the other hand, Mel Tucker kicked off his debut with the Buffaloes with a win, a 52-31 win over in-state rival Colorado State. They allowed Colorado State to score 21 points in the first half, but held them to just 10 points in the second half. And people were telling me that my spread pick was going to be wrong on that game, as it was a very tight game at halftime. But I said, just wait. Mel Tucker's going to go in there and make his adjustments. Colorado will cover. The spread was 13.5. Colorado won by 21 thanks to the adjustments that Mel Tucker made on defense and thanks to the phenomenal play offensively by their quarterback Steven Montez, the best wide receiver arguably in the Pac-12, and then a newcomer in running back Alex Fontenot, who rushed for 125 yards and 3 touchdowns. Not to mention the defense helped him out, creating 4 turnovers in that game. Colorado, at the beginning of the season, back in the preseason, I thought would be a fairly easy win for Nebraska. That's not going to be the case anymore. Mel Tucker has his team going in the right direction. He has the talent to beat the Cornhuskers. But I think Nebraska comes on the road, improves offensively, and gets a narrow win over the likes of the Buffaloes. Very narrow, much like it was last year, but this time in favor of Nebraska. And then finally, number 6 LSU, traveling to Austin against number 9 Texas. The battle for DBU. Which one is it? Is LSU the true DBU? Or is it Texas? We're going to find out in this game because both teams boast a very strong secondary. LSU arguably the best secondary in the entire nation, led by Grant Delpit, Christian Fulton, and Derek Stingley, who is also a potential dangerous punt returner. But if you want to forget about the secondary for a little bit, talk about the offensive play from both teams. LSU, we're witnessing what could arguably be one of the best offenses we have seen in maybe the past decade from an LSU Tigers team. They finally have a quarterback in Joe Burrow, who threw for 278 yards and 5 touchdowns in their game against Georgia Southern. I know, once again, not a power, but still an impressive offensive performance, especially from the passing attack, as LSU in recent years has been more of a run-heavy team. This LSU offense is going to have to get enough points and spread the field against a Texas defense that held Georgia to just 21 points in the Sugar Bowl last year, and that game, of course, looked a lot closer than it really was, and looked dominant in their season-opening win against Louisiana Tech. For the Longhorns, they also boast one of the better offenses in the entire nation, led by one of the better quarterbacks in the entire nation, in Sam Ehlinger, who threw for 276 yards and 4 touchdowns in their opening win over Louisiana Tech. He also has Keontae Ingram at running back and a great crew of wide receivers led by one of the best in the Big 12 and maybe even the nation in Colin Johnson. I've said it before and I'll say it again. This game will come down to defense. Will Texas's secondary, with their defensive backs, be able to shut down this LSU passing attack? And the same can be said for LSU. Will they be able to shut down this Texas passing attack? Both teams have decent run games, but not nearly as dominant as their passing attacks. I think LSU owns the slight edge defensively, and if this game was in Death Valley, I would lean more heavily towards the Tigers. I expect this game to be very close, but I think LSU comes into Austin and escapes with a narrow victory. But if you are betting on this game, keep one thing in mind. LSU, a 5.5-point favorite right now, needs to be wary that Tom Herman thrives as an underdog. In his career against the spread, Tom Herman is 13-2-1 as an underdog. He is 8-2-1 as an underdog during his time at Texas. So keep that in mind going into this game, as LSU should be a favorite going into this major Saturday night matchup that has major college football playoff implications. So there you have it, our top 5 games going into week 2. Will it be better than week 1? We think it will be 100%. 2 huge ranked versus ranked matchups that will have college football playoff implications, a potential revenge game between Nebraska and Colorado, a very intriguing matchup between Army and Michigan, and then, of course, Syracuse at Maryland. Mike Locksley looking to get to 2-0 in a game that, if Tommy DeVito steps it up, could be fairly high scoring and a chance for Maryland to solidify themselves as a threat in the Big Ten. It's going to be a wild week 2. It's going to be a fun one. Expect much more excitement than we saw in week 1, as this college football season is still young and getting underway. So guys, once again, thank you for watching us here on YouTube. Make sure you go check us out on Twitter and Instagram at Gridiron Expert. And of course, go check out our official website, thegridironexpert.com, where you can sign up for our weekly newsletter and also sign up for our expert picks, where once again, for just $30, you can receive every single one of our 2019 college football spread picks, including the postseason. And like I said, that's a deal you do not want to pass up, and you certainly don't want to miss our week 2 spread picks. Once again, thank you for watching us here on YouTube. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe. And we will see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.